Welcome to Merging Lanes podcast. This is episode 1. My name is Mark Manera. I am the founder and owner of the Trucking Fitness Company, and I've got my guest co-host. We'll get into the details of that later. But Mark Colson, how's it going?
Doing great. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
Awesome. Well, Mark, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so like I said, Mark Colson, I'm the president and CEO of the Alabama Trucking Association, which is one of 50 state trucking associations in America. Alabama is very blessed to have a strong and vibrant trucking community, and I am blessed to get to work for our association that represents the companies that call Alabama home. But I'm also, I'm a small town Alabama guy, grew up, born and raised in Alabama, but have been afforded really unique opportunities in the governmental affairs, public policy, the business world, and a pretty young career. And I've gotten to, travel the country a good bit and learn about what makes the economies of America tick, and especially the economy of Alabama. And trucking is a big part of that. So I'm excited to be a guest host with you. I'm excited to share good stories about what's happening in trucking and learn a lot. And being somewhat new to the trucking industry, I know I have a lot to learn. So I view this experience as a learning experience and a sharing experience. So I'm excited to get it kicked off.
And the funny thing I think is that number one, we don't really know each other very well.
Right.
So I think that Mark and I think we've known each other, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah, I think I'm a little over a year. I mean, when you introduced me to Trucking Fitness Company, and which I know we want to talk a little bit about, and you tapped on something that I knew was a problem in our industry, and everyone does, but most people want to find solutions, but sometimes that's hard. And so, that caught my attention, and after having a number of conversations about that, and it led us to other conversations, and yeah, we've never even met actually in person, but during COVID, that was a normal thing. So God has an interesting way of connecting people. So.
Oh, yes, he does. And, I think, when I started, so I was the initial person of, hey, I want to start a podcast, right? And I was kind of the creator of Merging Lanes. And, number one, I wanted to kind of start this I think 2021 and 2020 specifically was like a weird year for the trucking industry. And it was one that a lot of things had to adapt. And we're also at a weird time in our history of just like technology is coming in and it's coming in quickly. So, personally, I wanted to start this podcast and, to use it as a learning experience for myself, and also use it to, educate people on bringing guests on, from truck drivers to, maybe other state associations, people in the, higher up in the legal aspect of the trucking industry, and then also people from, different positions within trucking companies, and, just have conversations with great people from all over the industry, and use it as a way for, us to get those people's stories out, but also for us to learn something and, make some new friends in the process. And so, like similar to Mark, and Mark, you've been in for a little bit longer than I am, but I actually got into the industry just a little bit under a year ago. So personally, my goal of this is, I'm coming into the trucking industry as the health and wellness guy. And I think that to make the impact that I want to make on this industry, I can't just be the health and wellness guy. I have to be someone in the industry that understands all different aspects, but can be there for, to be the spokesperson, to be the advocate for drivers' health, and to show people that, everyone wins if the drivers are healthy. And, we're going to talk about it, later, but I think drivers' health can be a huge part of, the biggest problem we have in the industry. One of the biggest problems we have in the industry right now of retention and getting people to want to be a truck driver. So, Mark, tell me, I want to hear from, I know you can talk about college football up. How did you get to where you are?
It's funny. Everybody has a unique path and how they find themselves in a profession. Sometimes it's your family. Sometimes it's just divine intervention. For me, I actually grew up changing truck tires. My family my dad still operates a small retail tire business in Alabama, and grew up changing truck tires and any other type of commercial tires you can dream of. I've probably worked on them. And my granddad, his father-in-law, started that business in the 1960s, and it's still alive today. So that gave me an initial, introduction into the culture of, trucking, and obviously we served a lot of communities, farming, agriculture, but certainly learned the value of hard work, learned the challenges of entrepreneurism, and you're facing those now. You're an entrepreneur at heart, and I admire the heck out of that, and I have a lot of family members that are, and so really understand the benefits of that, and also the significant challenges. So fast forward in life, I had an opportunity to work for our state chamber of commerce for about 12 years, in various roles. And so I was really introduced to the trucking industry and leaders within it through that, and really positioned myself well, I think, to lead an organization like a state trucking association. So in between all of that, I did have a chance to play small college football, which was probably one of the most valuable experiences of my life, learning teamwork. And I'll tell you, there are some direct correlations between team sports, but in my opinion, football and the trucking industry. Trucking, like what you were talking about, it is a full contact competitive industry. From trucking companies, they compete hard with one another, compete for drivers, the allied industry, truck dealers. But one of the most unique things about the trucking industry is when a problem persists, those competitors come together like few other industries and work together to lift all boats. And that's one reason I've been proud to really dig in deep here in Alabama and try to find solutions to things like the driver shortage, insurance challenges. And it takes everyone. It takes the professional truck driver. It takes the CEO. It takes the CFO. It takes the fleet manager. It takes the safety director. It takes everybody working together to make all that make a profit. And then it takes the industry working together to solve big problems like truckers' health. There's no simple fix. If there were, we would do that. But I am extremely passionate about telling the stories of the trucking industry, because once you meet the people that work in our business, from the shop floor to the corporate boardroom, you learn that generally really awesome people, family-oriented people, problem solvers, and it motivates me to want to tell those stories on their behalf. I feel like that's one of my primary jobs, and I think that's one of the benefits of this podcast, is that we get to tell some tremendous stories, because there's perceptions out there, and I've always said one of the hardest things to do in life is change someone's perception. You can change the facts, but if their perception doesn't change, it doesn't matter what the facts are. And so that is a challenge for us in the trucking industry. How do we recruit more people? A lot of it's a cultural shift that is occurring and has to continue to occur. Much like health and wellness. So strange route of how I got to where I am, but what about you? Tell me how you got into the trucking.
Yeah. Well, something that I think you kind of hit, a nail on the head there was, how small or how big the industry is, but also, how small it is in the same word. Everyone knows everyone. And as I've gotten into this industry, it's funny how you start talking about trucking, or you start talking about truck drivers, and then people who you've known outside of just regular life are like, oh, my uncle's a truck driver. Oh, right. my grandpa used to work at a company, and he used to do safety for trucking. And it's just funny how in our society and just culture in general, just how intertwined freight and trucking is. And I think it's just a huge, thing of, 72% of everything that gets moved in the US is by a truck. Right. And
in Alabama, it's 86%.
There we go. So that's pretty awesome. Right. And, and so you've been, one other question, and then we can get on to it, kind of how I got into you've been there for 2 years.
Yeah. So I started in June of 2019, and, 8 months later, COVID, the global pandemic occurred. And so we had to shift the way we do things. I was still in a significant relationship building, learning mode, and still am, but we had to adapt like everybody did, and to make sure that we're serving the industry well. And I'm really proud of what the trucking community around the country did during the pandemic. We provided hope and stability we did our jobs like we do. One of the lines I've come up with being here, because you see people respond in troubling times, is that a crisis or Christmas, truckers are going to do their job. They're going to deliver their goods. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas time, getting you, your presents, or during a crisis. And a lot of times we were used to hurricanes or other types of regional crisis or emergency orders. This was one of the first times, I think really 9/11 was maybe the only one before that all these emergency orders weren't just to the southeast where a hurricane hit or an ice storm in the northeast. It was all 50 states, and then ultimately, obviously, the whole world. So that was unique in the way the trucking industry responded to provide, emergency relief supplies, to just restock store shelves when folks were over shopping unnecessarily, but we had enough stuff, and we restocked them, and then most recently delivering the vaccine and making sure the vaccine rollout. I know it wasn't perfect everywhere, but we're living in an imperfect world, so we were proud to be part of that. And another great example is in the fuel shortage recently with the Colonial Pipeline. I mean, truckers had to step up and also expose that both of those, the pandemic and the fuel shortage, both of them are exposing a systemic challenge we have in the trucking industry, which everyone's been talking about. And if you go on, over the last few months, it's been in daily papers all over the country, the driver shortage.
Yeah.
And there is no easy solution there. And I know we're going to have some great opportunities to talk about that issue throughout this podcast.
Oh yeah. And I'm excited. We're going to have to bring on some people and from different, because I've had the luxury of talking driver shortage with people from the company side of things and the recruiting retention side of things, but also from the drivers. Right. And you hear two different stories, but I think the bird's eye view of the story is the same thing of there's something wrong with the way that this industry is set up, and in the way of there are things that we can change. And I think there's a win-win situation out there for both the drivers and both the companies. And I'm excited to hear different people's perspectives and, ways of their solutions. But yeah, man, you hit with the pandemic hitting and you kind of getting into this role, like when the rest of the world was running out of Netflix shows, you were running crazy trying to figure out how the heck you can get more drivers in and the logistics behind all of that.
Well, and one of the things I'm afforded is there are lots of more experienced people in this business than myself. And I have the opportunity to learn from, like I said, I have 49 counterparts that are state association leaders, and that's a tremendous network. And I lean on them tremendously. I've been welcomed into that community just in our state. I mean, we have some very well-seasoned leaders that I've been able to learn from and work with. So it is a team. It's a team sport, especially during tough times, to make good decisions for a company or your industry. And so I'll say this: it was an interesting time, and reflect back on it. Still not out of it, and so I think there'll be further time for reflection one day. And I think that's an important thing for us all to do in life once you go through a tough time, is to be able to look back and see what you learned from it. But there was a lot of criticisms of local governments or state governments or even the federal government then and now. And sure, some of those criticisms are probably valid. But I'll tell you, in the rooms I was in with government leaders or agency leaders, when we had a problem that affected our industry and we were working on emergency orders or relief packages, whatever it might have been, I will tell you that from the top down, the people I dealt with were all in problem-solving mode. Many times, when you interact with intergovernmental or governmental agency, you get a lot of excuses, or we can't do this because, or and I'm not saying we all made perfect decisions, but I would say at least everybody had their problem solving hats on. And it was, how do we solve this problem? How do we work? What barrier do we have to remove to solve this problem? That was uplifting to me, even in an imperfect world where we made imperfect decisions. We tried to make the best ones with what we had. At least I can speak to the trucking industry. I can't speak to all the other decisions that were made. And so that was uplifting, when we were on the phone, with, the FMCSA, or at the state level with the governor's office or emergency management services. Everyone was trying to figure out a way to solve problems. And so that, at least from my bird's eye view. And so looking back on it, that is something that I think if most people saw that, they'd have a little more faith in some stuff. But I was pleased at how, our industry responded, but also how the folks in the governmental side that we had to work with worked as well.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And, I'll get into kind of how I got into this industry, but like similar to, well, you got in right before the pandemic. I got in during the pandemic. And so I'm kind of now in this phase of, wow, this is like, okay, now transitioning out of the pandemic and kind of back into somewhat regular life. Like, okay, how do we transition this and, make this something that's sustainable, right? And it's not just, oh, I got, I started this business and, we're shifting into that. And it's been fun to kind of see how the drivers have responded. And also, because I talk to drivers every single day, it's interesting to see the effects that last year had on the drivers from, a mental and physical standpoint. But, so those are kind of some of the stories that I want to talk through at some point with this podcast too. But, kind of going back to what you asked me a couple minutes ago of, I actually got started working with truck drivers on the rehab side of things. So I am in the physical therapy field. I'm actually 6 months away from graduating with my doctorate of physical therapy degree. And it has been a long 6 years. And I was on clinical rotations last summer in Southern Missouri, which is, it's home to a lot of trucking, and it's in the Midwest, and there's a lot that goes in and out, and there's a lot that starts there too. And I was working at an outpatient clinic and treating a truck driver who treated a ton of truck drivers, from work comp cases to just general injuries and stuff like this. But the one that stuck out and kind of it really inspired the trucking fitness company was a guy who just had a total knee replacement. He had been driving for 40 years. His knee's been bothering him for the last 20. And because he had to put, food on his family's table and keep a roof over their head, he didn't have time to go get the knee looked at. And he finally was able to because of the pandemic and everything. And so I was treating him and, as all, I don't know if you've been to PT before, but, okay. Yeah. So,
torture.
Yeah. Well, hey, we try not to, right? But, a common question we ask is, hey, what do you do for exercise? Right. And he kind of looked at me straight in the face or straight in the eyes and said, I'm a trucker. We don't do that. Right. And it was like one of those like really shocking things of like, oh, okay, wait, tell me, what do you mean by that? Right. And, I really got the opportunity to just kind of hear, the good and the bad of the trucking industry and hear, just the stories of his career and the, how great trucking has been for him and his family, but also the downfalls and, the disadvantages of being out on the road doing OTR for, months to weeks at a time. And the schedule that they run. Right. And, I actually had a past company before that did health and wellness coaching. And I kind of had one of those light bulb moments when I was working with him and I was just like, hey, what if there was a service that, sent you workouts that you could do on right to your phone every single day and you could do them right in your truck. And it was just like one of those moments where, his eyes lit up and was like, I've never heard of anything like that. That would be awesome. I didn't think he didn't think it was possible to exercise on the road. And it was just one of those moments where you remember all of the details. You remember exactly what you were doing at that time. And it was just probably one of the biggest moments that just really inspired me to go. And, one thing that being in the medical field and kind of just my personality and everything is I really like the research and the statistics. So that night I went home, I started digging into some statistics on drivers' health. And, you see the statistics and, you in the trucking industry probably already know them, but I didn't, being outside of it and just seeing the fact that these drivers are, not only sacrificing time away from their family, their well-being at, 85% of them are overweight, 1 in 7 have diabetes, but they're literally, sacrificing years off their life to go and bring my Wheaties to Walmart. Right. And so, that was really, I guess, I don't know if you want to, how you want to phrase it, the, nail in the coffin of I'm going to go do this. Right. And I'm going to go and really help drivers, be able to live a healthy life on the road and not, make their health or, their career define their health. And that has kind of been something that I started saying and just really motivates me because these drivers are bringing my coffee right to my house and everything, and they should be able to live a healthy life too. And I just rambled on for a long time, but I'm very passionate about it. And that has been the last year of really trying to entrench myself and dig deep into the trucking industry, get to know people. And that's kind of how we crossed paths. I don't know if it was on LinkedIn, I don't know if it was on Instagram, whatever it was, but I always tell people I think there's good and bads of social media, but one of the great things is just the ability to reach out and connect to someone that we would have had, I don't think we would have ever run past each other if it wasn't for that. And it kind of all started with a message, right? And we got on the phone. So that's kind of how I got into the industry.
Well, and I'll tell you, it was great to meet you that way because, one of the first things we did, I had noticed Trucking Fitness Company because, like you said, probably not as aware of all of the data that you referenced on the health of a driver and the health care of the industry, but certainly was aware that it was a problem and probably need to be more educated on that. So when I saw your product, it was one of the first things. I'm not saying there's not other solutions out there. It was just one of the first things I saw that actually empowered the truck driver. And so I was interested in it, and I'm into fitness mainly because I have to keep doing that to keep my mind occupied. And it's more about the mental health for me than it is even physical health. Physical health is almost just like the cherry on top of the benefit. I've learned if I don't exercise in some way or stay active, I'm not very productive mentally, and I think most people are probably like that. And so it caught my attention, and I thought it was very user friendly, easy to set up, engaging, sense of community. And it's more so not just about physical health. There's nutrition, mental health. And so, you're talking about an issue in a way that I think you have a part of a solution, but this is going to be one of the things that I think occurs over the next number of years as companies are evolving to stay profitable, competing for good talent that's out there. As the industry evolves, and we've seen this with technology. I will say, I think one of the most, and I can't speak to the history of the trucking industry, but at least present day, very embracing of technology, not fearful of that kind of change. I think we probably recognized as an industry a long time ago that if we're not on the cutting edge of that, then we're going to get left behind, or it's going to get forced down our throat through a government regulation that might not be the right fit. So, you see that now with just clean diesel. We're so much cleaner as an industry. The environmental impact is so much better. And we're a leader in that. We talk about those issues as an industry, and companies do, and they're proud of it, and they want to do more. And because they know that, the cleaner we are, the better we are, the more profitable we'll be long-term. And so, that's just one example where the industry really just took a leadership role. And so I think we can and need to, and there are probably things going on in the space, Mark, that you and I don't even know about. And I think that's one of the discovery phases of, this is the cool thing about two guys who are somewhat new to something and willing to admit what we don't know, is that we probably will learn a lot about other solutions to all kinds of problems in trucking, but even just focused on the healthcare arena. So I applaud you for the product, and I think it's clearly a passion of yours that resonates when people talk to you. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, so kind of what you just said was one personal reason why I wanted to start this podcast, but I'd love to hear kind of, your, I guess, personal goals of why the hell did you say when I asked you want to do a podcast, why'd you say yes to it? Right.
So it was maybe the second month on the job here. I was at a company event. They were celebrating 2 million safe miles. The truck driver got a pink truck, wrapped pink truck for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it had a proud woman flexing her arm on the side of the truck, and have a great picture of that. And a lot of companies reward company drivers with new trucks when they hit those. 1 million miles is great. 2 million safe miles is a big deal. A lot of drivers hit the 5 million safe miles mark, and that's a big deal. And so companies like to celebrate their professional drivers. And so when asked why he wanted to drive that truck, he said, because my mom is a breast cancer survivor, and this is one way I can honor my mom. And I got to spend some time with him, and just like you said, every time I spend time with the diesel tech or truck drivers, or I learn a different perspective about the industry, and it takes soaking all that up to try to really wrap my brain around what we're trying to do to advocate for the industry. So at that event, a young woman who runs their training and recruitment program was talking to me about their approach and how they try to create a great environment for truck drivers and their whole team, and how they recruit and how they train and develop the professional truck driver. And she just got really, really passionate. She's smarter than me, but she kind of got in my face. She used her fingers. She said, now look at me. I'm not a truck driver, but I'm a trucker, and I'm proud of it. And I was just like, when she said that to me that way, with that level of passion, it hit me. That's what we are. I mean, I'm a trucker. I wear, a collared shirt and a suit some days because I have to for work, but I'm a trucker, and I'm proud of it. And we should. And so that cultural shift and that perspective shift is what I think that is occurring. I mean, some really great things, and the pandemic, as bad as it was, I think created some opportunities for the average American to understand the role that the trucking industry play, and most importantly, not the industry, the people in it, and what they do, the sacrifices they make, and then also let folks know that it's a great place to go work and raise a family and provide for your family, from the professional truck driver on down and all around. I mean, I was at another similar event, Mark. This was a fun experience. I was talking to some commercial bankers pretty early on, and there were some really folks a lot smarter from me from the trucking industry. We were kind of giving an economic outlook, getting their feedback from what they're hearing from their customers who are in the trucking business, and it's just a learning process. There was about 5 gentlemen in the room, and at the end, I kind of said, well, okay, here's our challenge. I said, how many of you all have children? And all of them had raised their hand, different ages. So, well, how many of you would want your children to grow up to be a trucker? One guy started to raise his hand a little bit, and I said, hey, this is a safe place. It's okay. And I said, but okay, I understand the perspective that you have. So, but what if I told you your child could graduate, high school at 18, get 2 years of training, less than 2 years of training, really, become a diesel technician and work on trucks and make, $60,000 to $70,000 a year at age 20 or 19 with no college debt? How many of you were making $60,000 a year at age 19 with no college debt? And they were looking around. Said, okay, what if your daughter wants to be the general counsel for a trucking company and be a lawyer? Or what if your son wants to be a truck driver and maybe drive his whole career, or drive for a little while he figures out what he wants to do, rather than going to a 4-year college and, accumulating debt, trying to figure out which major to switch to. So that perspective. And I said, or look at me, I'm sitting in a room full of you all commercial bankers, and I'm a trucker. So what do we define as being? It takes the whole team. The truck driver is the backbone of our industry, and it's the front lines of our industry, but it takes the whole network, and we're all in that together. And so that eye-opening experience for me was something that really just planted that seed from the early days of me in this job. And since then, I've been really searching for opportunities the ways to tell those stories, not about myself, but about the people who make it tick. And I feel like that is part of changing that perception that must occur for us to continue this cultural shift within the industry, because the industry is not going away. I mean, no matter, we could talk autonomous vehicles, we can talk electric trucks, we can talk all this stuff, train different types of how we move commercial freight. Trucking has been here and it's here to stay. And so as long as we're in it, I want to help make it better, at least in, state of Alabama is where I call home, but we're a network all over this country, and we're a unified industry, and like few others. And so this podcast to me was a way to do that. Again, not to promote myself, not even really to promote, the organization I work for, but that's important to me to represent it. But it's more so to help, hopefully, anyone that would listen to this for them to have a little bit different perspective than they did before. And then as we have guests on here to educate me and you so that we can do our jobs better, but also that we can share their stories with hopefully, what will be a wider network of people. And maybe we'll inspire others to start other podcasts.
Yeah. I like that. The perspective change. I think we're going to run with that. Okay. Merging lanes, doing, trying to show different perspectives around the industry. But, we had to get that lady on. I love, like, there are people that you can just tell are passionate about what they do, or just passionate people in general. And I love talking to them because I by nature am a curious person and ask questions and want to get deep into things. And that's personally one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. But I would love to just get more passionate people on here all across the industry and just be like, okay, why are you so passionate about this? And what, share your perspective. Right. But, personally, part of the reason why I wanted to start this was just knowing the networking effect and the ability to talk to people, because for some reason we're recording the conversation and it's, we're going to put it on YouTube. They are willing to come talk to us and answer any questions we have. Right. But I also, as a learning experience, and, Mark, and again, we're going to have to come up with nicknames or something, because my name is Mark, your name is Mark, it's spelled the same way, whatever. But, though you are new to this industry, you have a different perspective, right? And you have way more knowledge than I do about a lot of different, sections of the industry, right? And so, my personal goal for this is every conversation we have, if it's us two, if it's with a guest, is just to soak in as much knowledge as possible, and then be able to, look at the Trucking Fitness Company, or, our service, our product, the way we present things to drivers, and just take that different perspective and that different knowledge, and be able to, really not only push our business, but push the impact we're able to make. Because I think that's, to me, Mark, you kind of mentioned it earlier, and, that's one thing that I admire about you is, you're a man of faith, and that's something that I am too. And I think that when I think of, obviously I want to make a good living for my family and be able to provide for them, but I'm very driven about impact, and I'm very driven about the, ability that I think technology has to create more of an impact at a faster speed, right? The ramp is a little bit more aggressive. And, I think that us having the ability to talk from St. Louis to Alabama and bring in people from all over North America to talk is just one of those ways of, wow, this is really amazing. And this is really cool that I have the opportunity to do that. So that's kind of my personal reasoning behind this. And I'm excited. I don't know how often we're going to do this. I don't know how long we're going to do this for, but we're here, and we're going to make it happen. And I'm excited to kind of bring on different guests and have conversations. But, the last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap this up is just from, sitting in Alabama at, the ATA, right? ATA. What is one big, problem, or I guess one thing that you're really focused on in the industry right now that you're either really passionate about or really trying to solve, find the solution for?
Well, it's as simple as workforce. I mean, there are a lot of challenges, policy considerations. DC is going to have those, all the time, different bills that come up, regulatory environment. But in our state, it's the workforce. So the trucking industry is 1 in 15 jobs in Alabama. Most people don't know that's 110,000 jobs in our state. There's nearly 5 million people in our state, and probably a little over 3 million, or under, I think around 3 million working people, Alabamians. And so that's tremendous. I mean, it is a tremendous industry that is from in every corner of the state. We have workforce pipelines that feed our industry, truck drivers, and the two big job categories are obviously truck drivers and diesel technicians. Those are on the top 10 jobs list wherever you go. And there's certainly other ones. We have great logistics programs at a lot of our four-year institutions here, and a lot of those folks go work in warehousing or in transportation and logistics companies that service our industry. But when I came into this job, and I've talked to the smartest people in our business in the state, at the governmental level, at the business level, I've talked to folks all over the country. What are we doing about the driver shortage? What are we doing to improve the workforce? And some companies are doing some things. There are some regions that are doing some things, but they're in Alabama, and probably most states are like this. There is no sophisticated, coordinated effort to feed the workforce pipeline for trucking.
Interesting.
And so other industries have created their own. Sometimes the government takes on the leadership role, especially when you're dealing with incentivized industries where the government's giving tax incentives to recruit a company. So the government takes over the workforce training part of that. In Alabama, it doesn't exist for trucking. Trucking is not necessarily an incentivized industry. And so we pay more, taxes and fees really than on top of the normal business taxes and fees that you pay to run any business, maybe more than any other industry. If not, healthcare, I know is a significant one that's highly regulated, highly taxed, and highly feed. But so one of the things we're doing, we're in the midst of it right now, is to find paths for people who want to be a truck driver or want to be a diesel tech. Empower them with good messaging and information about how do you go become one, and then make sure the pipeline that they enter is effective so that they get that training that's needed and then get into the workforce as quickly as possible for a good company, or start their own business, whatever that might be. They want to be an independent operator. But right now there's some pockets of success. We want to make sure that we have a coordinated program that is going to feed that system systemically for on into the future. It's not a one-time campaign. It's not a shot in the dark. It's not a hope and a dream. It is a data-driven approach to try to create a more highly skilled workforce for trucking. And what that will do long-term is it will drive up wages for the people who work in the business. Retention for companies will be better. Healthcare decisions that are made by those individuals will be likely better. And it will help drive what you and I are talking about, the perspective shift and the cultural shift that, like I said, it is occurring, but we can do things to make sure that people understand it, are knowledgeable about it, and attract people who want to perpetuate that culture. That's why Chick-fil-A is successful. Yeah. They have a culture that self-perpetuates itself. That's why University of Alabama football is successful. People want to know what the secret sauce is. Well, the secret sauce is they have a culture that perpetuates itself. And so that's what we have to do in trucking.
That's so would that look like I know you kind of brought up some examples, but would that look like trucking schools, trucking scholarships available to get people in there for free? Give me one example. Yeah. You don't have to get into
so we give diesel tech scholarships. They're very limited right now because our funding stream for them are limited, but that can grow over time. But yes, most of the time, the cost, to the individual, if apprenticeships are going to be big. That we've got to get back to something like that for trucking, to get people behind the wheel at a younger age, hopefully. And then the great question to ask, and this is some of the research that we're doing, we won't get into it here today, but who are the people that want to be truckers? Yeah. Or more statistically, or the higher probability of success as being a trucker? And are we communicating well with those groups of people? I'll tell you, women in trucking is growing. Women are 10% of the industry. Statistically speaking, you'll find that women are generally safer drivers than men. No offense, dudes. But I'm just saying, but that's still a small percentage. And are we communicating well? Are we, veterans, minorities? There are lots of, messaging that we need to make sure that we're talking the right way, presenting really good information to people who want to get into the business. And so, or might not even know they want to get into the business yet. There's a lot of individuals working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. Yeah. Might be driving for, rideshare service at night after getting off working full time during the day. And if they realize what they could make in transportation and logistics, working for a trucking company, same salary working 1 job as you do working 3, they might want to get into the business, but they've got to have that information about the benefits of it. They've got to have the information of where do they go to get trained, and then obviously they have to get into the workforce.
Yeah. And like, when you said that, like the people who are driving Uber or driving Lyft or whatever, I mean, I immediately, four people came to my head of, yep, I've got four friends who are doing that after they get off work at night. And it's like, it's crazy. Right. And you don't have to, like you said, you don't have to be a truck driver to be in the trucking industry and make a good living too. But one of my friends, his name's Dave. I can't remember, his company is called Next Gen. We're gonna have to get him on. He's we'll get him on and talk about kind of what he's doing at the high school level to promote trucking. But yeah, no, I think that's a really kind of very similar focus that I'm having of, I'm more of right now, my biggest focus is kind of on the flip side at the company level and really the retention side of things. And, when you look back and kind of bring back the impact, right? And when the impact that I can make in this industry with driver's health, I think that obviously going driver to driver is great and you can impact a lot of people, but that fight is a lot longer to impact this big of a population versus going to trucking companies and insurance companies and trucking associations and causing a trickle down effect of, hey, let's empower our drivers. And if we can get in at one company that can, hundreds, maybe thousands of drivers at one time versus how long would that take to impact with that one driver, one driver. So, what I look at it from a, business to business standpoint and getting in with companies, I think that the biggest thing that I look at and the problem I'm trying to solve is I don't look at wellness initiatives as wellness initiatives. I look at, in the trucking industry, I look at them as recruiting and retention initiatives, right? And I think that the trucking companies have the ability to empower their drivers and show their drivers that they care about them more than just a name on an Excel sheet and getting from point A to point B, and really showing the drivers the impact, or the companies the impact that caring about your driver's health can have. And that has been a huge kind of the big problem that I'm trying to solve. And I'm trying to, is it the messaging? Is it the way the service is set up? It's all of it combined, right? But that's kind of the thing that I'm most passionate about. And the thing I'm excited to get different perspectives and talk to a ton of different people on this podcast is, hey, how does your company, or how have you, talking to different people in trucking companies, how do they look at driver's health? How do they look at wellness initiatives? And, I'll tell you right now, most trucking companies don't have wellness initiatives. So probably some of them don't even look at them because they don't have them, or it's not even a thought of theirs. So that's kind of the big, I guess, uphill battle that I'm trying to solve. And I think that, when you take I guess the big picture of it, it kind of boils down to making this a career that is more enticing for drivers, and from a society standpoint, looking at it and being like, okay, hey, my health isn't screwed if I sign up to be a truck driver because, hey, I can still exercise, I can still eat healthy on the road and all of this. So there's a real systemic problem, I think, when it comes to driver's health. And that's kind of the biggest problem that I'm trying to solve. So, yeah.
Well, I think one thing that would be cool too, because it is a problem. And I'll say it's not just unique to trucking. I mean,
totally.
having efficient wellness. I would remember I guess the healthcare, the wellness plans of we talked about this in the 2000s and the 90s. I mean, they didn't really, they were just something, an employee benefit, but it wasn't part of like a company culture. And so that's the kind of thing that we're talking about in these shifts. And that kind of change doesn't occur overnight. It takes education. It takes two people coming together, at least two people coming together, acknowledging a problem and talking about solutions. You may disagree about the solution. That's okay. But hey, the first step is to talk about the problem and educate about the problem. And so, but there are also probably some really cool success stories of companies that have taken action and or found a solution, or drivers within the industry that are already influencers. And I know a couple that I follow on social media that are really into fitness, and they just use their platform as a driver to talk about and share with their colleagues of how they live their life, how they make decisions about their healthcare, about their, nutrition. And so we all need that kind of encouragement. And I commend you for fighting the battle. It's an important one for the trucking industry, be it Alabama or any other state, and then the nation as a whole. And so I think we're going to find that as you have the conversations that we're just talking about one issue that affects trucking. There's so many, but my brief experience in the industry, and I'm sure there's many that may hear this that have a lot more that may be jaded. Maybe they've been in the industry a long time, but my experience is that when there's a real problem, good people come together and they want to find solutions. And so you've targeted one that I think you're not going to get any pushback on, that it's a major issue that we all need to find. And you something you said early on, things have to be a win-win, and yep. It's got to be beneficial to the stakeholders involved. And I think that approach is the right one. But I'm excited to learn. I'm excited for the experience that we're going to have together.
Yeah. Anything else before we close out? You got anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, I'm going to be praying for you as you get your doctorate. I know finishing that out is going to be a challenge. And so God bless you in that. And
I appreciate that.
So, but do I have to call you Dr. Mark or Dr. Monera after I?
No. We joke. I'll be a fake doctor. I'll be a fake doctor.
I'll just call it. Listen, we need different names. I'll just call you Doc.
Okay. Well, I might not be opposed to that. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Well, I will say that I'll plug you and myself. I really do think you do a great job on social media. I'm like you. I don't love it, but it is a tool. It's a tremendously powerful tool. So for those that don't follow you, it's at Trucking Fit, right?
Yeah, at the Trucking Fitness Company at Trucking Fit, where one of those two will pull it up. And then, I've been really liking the LinkedIn and being able to post on there. And I think that I can have more conversations similar to the topics that we talked about here. But yeah, I think our biggest next step for this podcast is, number one, figuring out some nicknames for us so we can have something different. And number two, we got to figure out what the people want guest wise. So if you're listening to this, thank you so much for experiencing episode 1 with us. And if you've got someone you want us to talk to, or you think is a very passionate person within this industry, shoot one of the Marks at a DM or a message, and we'll bring them on. Well, Mark, thank you for coming on.
Looking forward to it.